action item, and I thank you. I'll ask that each commissioner please respond with a here when I call his name. Commissioner Jim Doan.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Duggan.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Todd Sanders.
Here.
Thank you. And Commissioner Dick Schmidt.
Here.
And Commissioner Bernice Bagnall, I'm here. So next we will just hope that those few minutes did the trick, and our CEO Tom Hickman is on the call now, and so we'll move to reports by the Chief Executive Officer and management staff.
So through our issues here, but if you can hear me, I'm going to let Paul continue to try to get us here so you can see us. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to see my PowerPoint because I can't even send the PowerPoint to Paul to put up on the screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and speak if that's okay.
Well, we can hear you just fine. So as long as you're clear and there are no cartoons we're missing, this should work out.
All right. So first, Portland Cryptosporidium results for the month of August 2020. The Portland Water reported no Cryptosporidium oocyst detections in water samples collected from the Bull Run headworks. Additional details on Cryptosporidium may be found at www.portland.oregon.gov/water/crypto results. And then a little bit on the wildfire incidents. As a result of the recent wildfires, Tualatin Valley Water District temporarily reduced its water demands from the Portland Water Bureau and obtained emergency leased water from the Joint Water Commission to meet customer needs. In conjunction with local partners, staff worked diligently on contingency supply plans. Our region is very fortunate to have several high-quality water sources which contribute to the public health, fire protection, and economic business industrial demands for water. A little more on this continued. The district, through its Emergency Operations Center, continues to monitor system demands and is prepared to facilitate any adjustments as necessary. Events such as this reinforce the value of regional planning, partnerships, and the importance of alternative water sources in the event of emergencies. So I just want to thank the board and our customers for being patient as we work through these recent incidents. A little good news that came out just this afternoon was that the Bull Run watershed is no longer in the evacuation zone. So that's fantastic news, and we are going to be canceling our order for the emergency lease from JWC and go into stand down mode once again. So very much looking forward to doing that. And then a little more on the wildfires during this time. It is also important to note that TVWD's water remains safe to drink and use. Water quality continues to exceed all federal standards. Water supply is meeting the needs of our customers. TVWD is prepared to provide emergency drinking water through emergency distribution trailers and support emergency responders or customers in our region if needed. And lastly, I want to point out that the rumors that have been coming out this afternoon that FEMA was or is going to declare that the water in the Portland metro area is unsafe to drink. That is a false rumor. It is evidently speeding around the social medias, Twitter and Facebook, those are untrue, and our water, as well as the water supply in the region, remains safe to drink, and has not been harmed in any way or as toxic in any way as some have alluded to in these rumors. So just want to make that clear to our users. COVID-19 response, I think we're maybe 7 months into this now, so it's kind of hard to believe it's continuing on. But we continue to navigate and respond to the challenges posed by the current pandemic. Customer service representatives have reached out to 367 customers with account delinquencies, informing them about the new utility assistance program funded by the CARES Act. The district has adapted working conditions to accommodate staff needs, which were identified during the recent caregiver survey. Employees, including field staff, are able to work within flexible schedules while still completing the necessary work to fulfill TVWD's mission. So we continue on despite those challenges. And then some really good news. Maybe some of you have heard this. You're going to hear more about this later on this evening. But late yesterday afternoon, we got word that on WIFIA that we have secured a new interest rate through the EPA on our WIFIA loan. We went from an interest rate of 2.39% to 1.35%, resulting in a savings of over $122 million over the life of the loan for our customers. So that is a huge, huge win. And I just want to give a huge thanks to our finance department for getting this done. The EPA staff who worked with us to help make this happen, and Senator Merkley's office for also weighing in on this and getting this up and going. So this has been a great thing for us, and we're very excited to be able to bring that news. So
yeah, that is so huge, and big thanks and kudos to finance staff, legal staff, everybody involved. That is wonderful news.
Yes, it is. And we're very excited about it, and certainly helps with us as we deal with our future finances and some of the challenges you'll be hearing about in a while here that we're also dealing with. I believe I saw a message from Commissioner Sanders that he may have had a question.
No, I was just saying the same thing as Bernice. Bravo. Congratulations, and absolutely wonderful.
Yes. Yep. We're very excited about it. So, okay. So
it reminds me of when my husband bought a car several years ago, and they offered him 0.4% financing, and Kurt looked at him and said, "So is that an IQ test?"
Yeah, that you're
okay.
We are approaching free money at that point, so that's a good deal. And as Paul pointed out to me just a little while ago, when you think about the duration of this, taking us out to what, 2061. Think about having a secured loan going out that far into the future. That's a pretty remarkable thing. There's no doubt in my mind that as time rolls on, people will be looking at that very envious. So it's a good thing.
So just as a side note, I'm sorry, I know I've asked this before, but I've forgotten the answer. Is Hillsborough also refinancing, and where are they on that process?
Okay.
I'm going to have Paul respond to that.
So yes, they are. The EPA strategy was to work with TVWD first to get the loan documents modified. We've done that, and then they're turning to Hillsborough now to use that as a template for their re-execution. So they too will be closing probably within a week or two, and so hopefully the interest rates will stay low and they'll get a similar boost.
No, that will be wonderful. We want our partners to be financially healthy.
Definitely.
We do.
Thank you, Paul.
So next is our safety minute and department report from Clark Balfour, our general counsel, and he will be presenting this evening. So Clark, take it away.
So I totally love when Clark does the safety moment, and I was a little bit, I have to say, disappointed when I found that it was not about trapping moles or anything like that tonight. But I will swallow my disappointment and hope for good things.
Well, thank you. And I had the same thought, but it seemed like this was so timely that I felt compelled to go through this. So, I suppose that right now, wildfire smoke is something that we can all say that we've experienced. So Tim is going to help me go through these slides. So once again, as we've experienced, wildfire smoke's a mixture of a lot of stuff, small particles, gases, and vapor, and the density and the associated symptoms change with weather and heat. And we've all seen that recently. And to your right, there are some websites where that are pretty telling as far as some of the issues that come from wildfire smoke. Okay, Tim, let's go. So who's the greatest at risk? What we've been hearing, people who have heart and lung diseases, asthma, older adults are more likely to be affected by this, but children also. So this is a really crucial topic, particularly when we have a long range or mini day event like this. Next slide, please. So, and what are the problems? Okay, raise your hand if you've experienced in the last few days burning eyes, running nose, scratchy throat, headaches, and just not feeling that great. And I can say that's true. You get out in that stuff and it's not good. And what do you get? You get, you can have symptoms like wheezing, shortness of breath, that whole thing. And so, you have to be aware of it. And our usual methods of doing, medicines we might take or other things, those don't always work. And so you need to avoid exposures and sometimes seek a doctor. Next slide, please. Oh, Commissioner Doan, do I see your hand up?
No, I took you literally. Raise your hand if you have.
That's great.
It must be Army time that leads me to follow instructions.
Oh, that's okay. Good. All right. So what can you do? Well, planning is one thing, and that's what you see there on the screen is first of all the chart that you would get if you went to that website that takes you from okay to hazardous, and so that's a great way to check before you go out and what you can do, and might also help determine whether you want to travel through more heavily impacted areas. Next, please. So, what can you do? Stay indoors, keep your air as clean as possible, keep your windows and doors closed, run your air conditioner on a recirculating mode if you can. Now's the debate. I think the HVAC companies are going to do really well replacing filters here very quickly. Avoid physical exertion outside, stay hydrated. And the curious thing is, the mask that we may be wearing now to help fight COVID and that sort of thing may not really help you out in the smoke situation. So maybe we need to have a second type of mask to go over our first type of mask to get through this. But other than that, I think be careful, and hopefully this will pass soon. I think what's really strange for me is I have some flowers outside that for some reason have performed better in these smoke conditions than they have in regular conditions. So I'm puzzled by that.
So Clark, I have a question that we have heard twice now on the news, that part of keeping the smoke out of your house is that you should not vacuum. And now normally that's the kind of advice that I would accept without question, because I really hate to vacuum. But why?
You know, that is a good question. I think the fact is, I don't know that it's the smoke itself that is the problem. I think it's just the fact that you're stirring up more particulates and putting it in the air with, and then we already have the smoke event. Because they've also been saying the same thing on, you know, if you have, say, a gas fireplace or something like that. So I think it's just the fact that you're putting more strain on the airflow within the house, which may have may be compromised because of smoke or have a lesser ability to get that fresh air exchange that you're looking for.
I don't know, it's kind of making me want to vacuum, which has like never happened before. So it's weird.
Okay. Anyway, I think that was my last slide. And so unless there are any other questions, I'm ready to move on to the department report. And we can go to the next slide, Tim. Thanks. So I'm going to give you just a quick outline without graphics of just what we've been working on. And as you heard, we completed the WIFIA loan refinance. And so really they call it a re-execution, but it's a refinance of our loan that we took last year. And, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. And a big part of it is I guess the due diligence efforts that a borrower needs to go through in order to sign the loan document. So there's always a series of required representations or certifications of compliance that we need to make. And so with that comes a review of those terms, and then actually doing the ground truth to confirm that we are in compliance, review of the loan documents, preparation of the opinion letters that allow the EPA then to rely and sell the bonds. I put in here support of the CFO, and it was support of the CFO. My first reaction was to say care and feeding of the CFO, but that really wasn't the case. The fact is that I helped Paul as he needed it, but I'm going to tell you, in all the years that I've been working on various financings, the 2019 WIFIA loan and this re-execution refinance of that loan were the smoothest financings that I have ever had the pleasure to work on, and I'm going to attribute all of that to the efforts that Paul made, running point and keeping this thing moving. So Paul, I know you had some kind words a few minutes ago from the CEO, but I also want to say the same thing. I think you did a fabulous job on this and made my job very, very easy. And of course, we got to closing yesterday, and then you heard the results earlier from Tom. So that was really a great effort. Next slide, please, Tim. So then our other big initiative right now is the Customer Information System Project, which is our joint project with Clean Water Services. We made tentative award to open, and we've been negotiating the contract and the statement of work and all the things that go into that. It's a fairly complicated document. We've been talking on contract terms and documentation for some time. We are nearly complete. In fact, I really thought that by this time today, I would be able to tell you that we finally landed the final issues, but we didn't. But we are very, very close on this. So I think that Andrew should be able to give you a good report on this in the very, very near future. Next slide, please. Okay, so I put this under the topic of Beaverton because there's just a bunch of pieces that are moving, and they all are geographically related to Beaverton or related by agreement. So we have various things going on. One is the Bradley Corner water main transfer from Portland that is on your agenda for later tonight. And that is going to be a very important piece of our ability to serve our customers now and once the Willamette is online. But with that comes the Bradley Corner emergency intertie between TVWD, Tigard, and Beaverton that you approved last month. So when we obtain control of the Bradley Corner water main from Portland, then we'll be in a position to make these emergency connections with the other two cities. We've always had, not always, but since 2018, we've had the agreement for water service with the city of Beaverton. We continue to work on separation issues for the various areas that they have withdrawn, an emergency connection intergovernmental agreement that you approved a while ago. So there are always things that are happening in that venue that require staff time and some of the legal department's involvement. And then, of course, county road opportunity projects, as they come up, also have an impact on the agreement. Later on our agenda tonight, there's also a piece of the Beaverton agreement that deals with the postponement of the meeting we're supposed to have in 2020, and we'll talk about that then. But just know that Beaverton geographic issues take a lot of time and staff effort from TVWD, and that requires some legal support. Next one, Tim. COVID, of course. You remember that before the fires? COVID. Legal is really involved in ongoing internal assistance on policies and for both our employees as well as our customers. And you can see a laundry list there of things that we're generally involved with. And then, of course, from an external point of view, not only for TVWD, but for the program, are there issues regarding contract performance? And because this does start to factor in to the force majeure clause that appears in every contract in terms of, circumstances beyond your control that may prevent performance. So we're trying to monitor those very carefully. Next, please. And then, of course, the WWSS, as we just said. Right now, the focus, as you've heard in Dave's reports in the past, is on land acquisition. And so we've had resolutions of public need at the project level, and we've engaged in some eminent domain proceedings. We also have land disposition issues going on. We purchased the water treatment plant site some time ago, but also we had provided an opportunity for Trammell Crow to purchase the approximate half of that. That is actually coming in for a landing now. And so we anticipate closing that transfer, so we retain our site, convey another site to Trammell Crow, get some money back, and we're able to move on with our project. WIFIA support, as we just talked about. And then, of course, there's the ongoing day-to-day contract management that we have to deal with. So the Willamette is in case you hadn't noticed, the Willamette is a busy project right now. Next, please. And then the Joint Water Commission. So I know there's a Joint Water Commission Management Committee meeting this week, but we've had various issues that have come up regarding the Joint Water Commission assets in terms of the North Transmission Line. And the North Transmission Line has had some requests from Forest Grove to get an emergency connection or maybe some alternate connection. Beaverton has shown interest in obtaining some capacity out of that. And then the city of Banks presented itself as seeking a small amount of water because they're essentially in a moratorium. So those kinds of issues are coming up, and we're trying to advise the board and staff on how best to proceed. There's a land purchase for the water intake, which is something that's been talked about for quite a while. And then, of course, the Scoggins Dam raise. And with the Scoggins Dam raise comes some water right issues that we need to sort through. So the Joint Water Commission is moving along, but as always with any of these joint entity sorts of operations, there's always issues and matters to be discussed. And so that's just ongoing advice. Next, please. My favorite, questions. Glad to answer anything that has come up.
Are there questions from board members? I always remember at times like this, a guy from Wharton Economics who always ended his presentations by saying, This is the part where I am told I should entertain any questions. So if you have any entertaining questions, please tell me now.
Oh, I like that approach. I'm going to use it. Thank you.
Okay, well, hearing no entertaining questions, Tom, are you all done with the CEO report?
I am all done.
All right. Moving then to Commissioner communications and reports of meetings attended. I'm going to go alphabetically. And so Commissioner Jim Doan, if you would start us off, please. Thank you.
Okay, I attended the work session. I attended a meeting to discuss salary issues, Jim Duggan, Tom, Paul, and I, and tonight's meeting.
Thank you. And moving to Commissioner Jim Duggan.
All right. Well, I've had a fairly busy month for late summer. It's unusual. On August 25th, I attended the virtual rate forum event that staff put on, talking about our proposed rates and how they come about and what they're anticipated to do. On the 26th of August, I attended a CPO meeting that was a combined CPO number 1 and number 7 to discuss the Northwest Saltzman Road project. It's kind of a controversial project because of the alignment that has generated a lot of concern, both from the neighbors and from potential developers. It's a pretty interesting project and related to the water district. It's right in the middle of our northeast area. And they discussed a whole lot of issues. The county commission has appointed a PAC, that's a project advisory committee, as opposed to a political action committee. And they're going to be studying that over the next couple of months and get as much public input to allow the county commissioners to decide on a final alignment for Saltzman Road. On September 1st, I attended our board work session and executive session where we received some updates. On September 3rd, I attended the Willamette Water Supply System Board meeting where we had both an executive and a regular meeting. On the 4th, I also was at the meeting with Tom and Jim Doan to talk about the compensation study and pay rates at the district. A week ago, Wednesday, I attended the Regional Water Providers Consortium Executive Committee meeting where we discussed how things were going in the consortium, what staff has been working on, and the anticipated budget. I do have some good news. Wilsonville has finally decided to rejoin the Regional Water Providers Consortium again. They will be coming in this next year. It will reduce our dues somewhat, but of a bigger consequence is that staff is anticipating there'll be about $127,000 carryover for into the next fiscal year because of inability to expend money on in-live person events, and also that certain staff are furloughed at the City of Portland that will benefit the consortium's bottom line. So what we're anticipating is that our dues will be flat or maybe even be reduced going into the next fiscal year somewhat. Not a big amount, but the goal is to keep them flat. On the 10th of September, I met with Faye Branton to sign documents and get an office tour, and then tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Jim. And I am personally really glad that Wilsonville has decided to rejoin the consortium because, you know, that's one of those things that being a regional market and sharing media, they benefit from they benefit whether they pay dues or not. And so I'm glad they've decided to pay dues again.
Well, I think they realized that some of the effort that they were having staff do was really duplicative in order to keep them in line with the state rules from the water divisions. So I think they finally came to their senses that it's a good buy to be part of the consortium.
Good for them. So thank you. And turning to Commissioner Todd Sanders, your report.
Right. On the beginning of the month, September 1st, I attended our monthly work session. Just this last Friday, which would be September 11th, I met with CEO Hickman, and then today's meeting. I don't like following Jim Dugan anymore.
Now,
He does too much.
He is a tough act to follow. I will agree with that. Commissioner Schmidt, how about you?
I have three. On the first, the work session. On the 8th, I had a meeting with Tom and you about the agenda for this meeting and tonight's meeting.
All right, thank you. And going last, even though in alphabetical order, I should clearly be first, but you know, just being polite. On the 25th of August, I attended the Virtual Rates Forum, gave me an opportunity to listen to our ratepayer concerns and feedback, and I want to commend staff on what a wonderful job they did with that. It was very well done and really worthwhile. On the 26th of August, I had a conference call with the Barney Reservoir Joint Operating Commissioner Auditor, and that was to do audit due diligence, where they ask you all those frightening questions like, do you think there's fraud? And God, you know, if you answer yes, then it's like, why haven't you said anything? It's kind of a terrible meeting, but it has to be done. And on the 1st of September, I attended the board work session where we got updates on the Willamette Water Supply Project and the Customer Information System Project. On the 8th, I met with our CEO and the board vice president to do agenda planning. And then, of course, tonight's meeting with regular district business. So, moving smoothly to topics to be raised by commissioners. Do we have any topics?
This is Dick, not I.
Okay, hearing the sounds of silence on topics, public comment is the next item on the agenda. Public comment time is set aside for persons wishing to address the board on items on the consent agenda and matters not on the regular agenda. Additional public comment will also be invited on agenda items as they are presented. Do we have any persons on this call who would like to comment? Hearing none, I will move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be enacted in one motion without separate discussion. Any board member may request that an item be removed by motion for discussion and separate action. Any items requested to be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion will be considered immediately after the board has approved those items which do not require discussion. We have two items on tonight's consent agenda. The first is to approve the August 19th, 2020 regular meeting minutes, and the second is to approve the September 1st, 2020 work session minutes. Do I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented?
This is Jim Duggan, so moved.
This is Todd Sanders. I second.
Thank you. Commissioner Duggan has moved and Commissioner Sanders seconded. Catherine, would you please provide a roll call vote of commissioners?
Commissioner Bagnall?
Yes.
Commissioner Doan?
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders?
Yes.
And Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes.
Thank you.
That is unanimous and the motion passes. Banging my gavel right now. Business agenda items. Time will be set aside for public comment on each business agenda item, and each person is limited to 5 minutes unless an extension is granted by the board. Should 3 or more people testify on the same topic, each person will be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise noted on the agenda. So the first business agenda item we have is to consider adopting Resolution 13-20, which is a resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement between the Tualatin Valley Water District and the City of Portland for a water main transfer. We will have a staff report from Chief Engineer Carrie Pack.
Good evening, President Bagnall, and all of the commissioners. I am going to, before I start this, well, first I'm going to share my screen. And if you can, somebody could tell me that you see my screen, that would be great.
I see it. That's a deck.
I see
Thank
it, but
you.
it's not in, oh, there we go. It wasn't in show mode, but now it is.
Great, thank you. So just for a couple of clarity, I'm actually in Everett today at my sister's house because she's not feeling well and I'm being the nurse for her. But the internet connection is a little spotty. So I have both of my devices open, and if I'm not coming through, if someone could either say something or put it in a chat room, that would be really, really helpful for me. And again, before moving on with the business item, just wanted to let the commission and everybody else listening to the meeting know that during the safety moment, Clark mentioned the air quality issues, and one of the best things to do right now is to stay indoors. Heeding to those advices from the healthcare providers, we are keeping our field crews working from inside, and just so everybody knows that some of our field responses may be a little bit slower. We're actually only responding to true emergencies of nature, and thankfully they haven't happened in the past couple of days. So we're just crossing our fingers and knocking on wood that that's not going to happen for a few more days until the air quality gets better. And one correction or clarification on Clark's department report. He mentioned that Bradley Corner emergency intertie agreements were approved by your body last month. Actually, the IGA that you approved was to do a study on whether emergency interties should be completed, and if so, how, what the design parameters will be. Any emergency interties coming from, resulting from those studies will come back to this body before they actually get approved, and they are mere details. And I would like to, at the risk of being self-admiration committee member here, I don't know if you've noticed the amount of work that Clark mentioned at his department report, and he forgot to mention that he's a department of one. And we just want to appreciate Clark's work so much, because all the things that we do
I was
couldn't be
actually
done
going to
without
ask
him.
that, but I didn't want to insult him in case he has like a dynasty I didn't know about.
No, it's actually pretty amazing how much work that comes out of that office. And I know that I've made his life a little bit more difficult at times here and there. So, okay, on with my presentation, which is actually going to be not that long. This is an intergovernmental agreement for water main transfer. We've heard about this discussion both from last month's discussion from Nick Augustus, as well as some of the descriptions that Clark provided earlier today. And what we're talking about is basically transferring asset that's owned by City of Portland, 27 linear foot of 24-inch pipe that's located along the Multnomah Boulevard and Garden Home Road, and then additional 7,000 linear foot of, again, 24-inch pipe built, located in the Southwest Olson Road. The 7,000 linear foot of pipe that was that's in Olson Road was actually constructed in 1973, and in partnership with the Winmar Company, which was the developer for the Washington Square shopping center that we know of, and Metzger Water District, and City of Beaverton and Tigard Water District. And these partners came together to build this line because, again, Washington Square was developing, and we needed to, to ensure that water was going to be available. And also, we wanted to make sure that Metzger Water District had enough water for its future as well. So once the project was done, the partners transferred the ownership to the City of Portland. And in fact, I think that was one of the conditions of pipe being constructed and water provisions being carried forth, was that the ownership was going to be solely held by City of Portland. So they've been they have owned and operated this line since 1974. What we're talking about right now is to actually transfer that ownership from the city to TVWD for the cost of $10, which is how much we paid them when it was transferred back in 1974.
Just seems like there ought to be a little inflation on that, but never mind.
Well, the inflation
$10 is a good price.
It is a good price, but it's not free, unfortunately. The $10 cost comes with additional responsibilities. We will be taking on the operations and maintenance right away, actually effective September 30th. And Paul would probably give me an attagirl by saying that, these are, sometimes we call these assets, but a lot of times they're liability because you have to maintain and operate them, and there are, costs associated with operations. We also have some customers that exist in the system that will be wheeling waters to until the additional work for receiving water from Willamette Supply System is completed. And once that happens, but prior to 2026, we need to negotiate the new wholesale agreement for these wheeled customers in this area, as well as some of the customers in the northern portion of our district, northeastern portion of our district, where we presently have wheeling agreements with City of Portland. And again, as Clark mentioned, the emergency supply agreements will be coming to this body if all of the parties decide that this is something that we want to do. And I'm going to use the graphics that Nick used last month to kind of go over real briefly how the water flow happens. So right now, the water comes in through the Garden Home area. A small portion of it is peeled off to Garden Home, but even smaller portion goes all the way down to Olson Road. Right now, we're circulating very, very small amount of water. Otherwise, the customers in City of Portland area near where the Garden Home Reservoir nomenclature is in the right-hand side of your slide, will see a very poor water quality. So we've been kind of doing this in cooperation with the City of Portland for their customers' benefit. There is a connection that City of Tigard used to use before they went off and secure their own water supply at the Bradley Corner location, and that physical connection still exists. And but the water has not been flowing down to City of Tigard since 2015 or 16. I can't remember the exact date. So when we are looking for, what we're looking to do is to construct some additional lines until 2026 as part of the MPE. And I'm not really sure if you can see the green lines on Shoals Ferry as well as Hall Boulevard and the Garden Home area. We'll be constructing those green lines to bring the water to this location from WWSS. So water will be going up north, up through the Shoals Ferry, all the way to Beaverton Hillsdale connection. And that's one of the primary route for the Wolf Creek area to get WWSS water. But it will also take a turn to right turn at Hall Boulevard. We will be reversing the flow on this 24-inch line and pushing the water to Garden Home pump reservoir. And by doing that, we'll be able to actually improve the water quality in Garden Home that would be otherwise if we weren't using this flow. And it also will be pushing water to Florence Lane and then ultimately to Taylor's Ferry Reservoir as well. The other aspect of work that, this is a slide that Nick showed last month, that City of Portland or City of Beaverton will be getting some of their water from they're building additional 16-inch line in Hall Boulevard. Potential for intertie, emergency supply exchange. This scenario would be Portland exchange or Beaverton exchanging water to Tigard. This situation would be Tiger's water going to Beaverton or to TVWD. And in this situation, WWSS water from MPE going to City of Tigard. So there's multiple permutations of water exchanges should there be an emergency situation. And we're working through all of that to make sure that we don't mess this up, because there's a lot of opportunities where we can screw things up if we don't do it right.
A lot of opportunity, but a lot of flexibility. It sounds like
Yes.
a really great thing.
Yes, and that's key to some of the work that all the partners are coming together is, just being able to provide water to each other, should emergencies like this happen, the wildfire or COVID or whatever else, is going to come down and that we're going to have to face. We just want to leave as much operational flexibility as possible. And so that's one of the main reasons why we're taking on this this study. So with that, very quick primer, and it's I feel like this is a good IGA and good exchange of assets and responsibilities and opportunities. We are asking you to consider adopting a resolution that you have before you in approving an intergovernmental agreement between Tualatin Valley Water District and City of Portland for the water main transfer, also known as located at the Bradley Corner Water System facilities, and authorize CEO Hickman to execute an amended version, so long as there is an substantial difference from the exhibit that you have on your in your packet. So, with that, I will entertain any questions, any entertaining questions.
So, Tom, do you have $10?
Paul told me that he had $10 that we could use.
Yeah, no problem. I'll kick in the $10.
Just want to be sure. Do we have questions from other commissioners?
This is Jim Doan. No questions here.
This is Dick. No questions.
Okay.
No questions.
In that case, do I have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 13-20, a resolution approving the intergovernmental agreement between the Tualatin Valley Water District and the City of Portland for water main transfer?
This is Jim Doan. So moved.
This is Jim Duggan.
Dick, second.
I'll let Dick second.
Second.
Okay, closely contested, but Commissioner Doan moved and Commissioner Schmidt seconded. So, Catherine, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
Yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
A hearty yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. That is unanimous and the motion passes. Our second business item is to consider approving a motion to postpone the biennial meeting with the Beaverton City Council to a mutually agreed upon date in calendar 2021. And we'll have a staff report, please, from Legal Counsel, Chief Legal Counsel Clark Balfour.
Well, thank you, President Bagnall. I guess if I'm the only person in the department, I'm both chief legal counsel and legal counsel. So there you go.
I just wanted to give you all of the honors to which you are entitled.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. So what we have tonight, it's really kind of an odd thing. So in the water service agreement that we executed with Beaverton, we agreed that every other year commencing in 2020, that the council of the city and you as the governing body of Tuolumne Valley would meet and discuss issues that have arisen. You know, so now we have this contract requirement, and yet between COVID, between other events, between the fact that, you know, the city is in the process of changing their governance style. They're moving from a strong mayor form to just a more traditional mayor form of government with a city manager. There's a sense that after the first of the year, there's going to be new management for the city. And so in thinking about this, it seemed from both sides' perspective, that it was probably best to postpone this meeting that's required by our contract. And then, you know, how do we do that? And so, you know, theoretically, we should go through an entire amendment of the contract and all those sorts of things. But that seems a little wasteful, I suppose, to do that. So what we agreed with the city was this board and their council would adopt a motion similar to what I've placed in your staff memo that would postpone this meeting by mutual agreement to sometime in 2021 to be mutually agreed upon, that we do it by letter between the CEO and the mayor, and that would push it off until everybody is in a better position where we have a set agenda, we know the issues, the city has resolved its organization issues, and we can have a meaningful conversation. So that's really what's before you tonight, is to adopt this motion, and then that will be followed up by a letter from Tom to Mayor Doyle, and we'll convene sometime next year.
And perhaps by then they can yell at us in person.
Well, we haven't set the agenda yet. So if we need to put down a mutual yelling section, we can do that. I'm kidding, actually. I think that I want this to be, this is positive. I think that we have a lot of commonality of interest with the city. I think we have, there's issues with them on a regional basis, JWC basis. Obviously, we have these interfaces where our systems are meeting, and so there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things that we need to discuss. And I'm convinced that it will be a discussion in a positive manner.
I share your optimism.
Thank you.
Do we have comments or questions from other board members? All right then. Do I have a motion and a second that the 2020 biennial meeting between the Beaverton City Council and the TVWD Board of Commissioners be rescheduled to a mutually agreeable time in calendar year 2021, and that the CEO is authorized to execute a confirming letter to the city?
This is Dick. I so move.
This is Todd Sanders. I second.
Thank you. Commissioner Schmidt has moved. Commissioner Sanders seconded. Therefore, with no further discussion, I guess we will take a roll call vote. Catherine, please.
Commissioner Bagnall,
Yes.
Commissioner Doan,
An enthusiastic yes.
Commissioner Duggan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sanders,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. The motion passes. I love that we've had hearty yeses and we've had enthusiastic yeses tonight. People are just all in.
I have a
So-
minute. All right,
That-
thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Clark. So moving from the business items to informational presentations, we will have an informational presentation on, which is an update on the district's financial performance and the staff report by CFO Paul Matthews.
Yeah, if I can get, having a little bit of a challenge getting my, I think we need to turn something off here.
No.
So I love that we can see you and Tom in the conference room. That's really kind of funny. If you get up to stuff, we'll know.
This is Jim Dodd. I noticed you're practicing safe distancing too.
I know. Opposite sides of the table, clearly 6 feet apart. These guys are all over it.
So let's try this. No, we are still getting feedback. So maybe we need to turn off that mic, Tom, and I'll use this mic.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. I think we have our technology squared away here. So this presentation, first of all, good evening, President Bagnall and Commissioners. This presentation will be very similar to the presentations I've given in the past. I'm trying to keep it in a similar manner so we can address the same issues in pretty much the same order. So with that, I'm going to cover developments on the local unemployment situation. And I'll talk about our financial performance. Of course, we'll look at the revenue, the collections, and the expenses. And then I'll give you a very brief update on the WIFIA, since we've really already talked about that tonight. Did we lose the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, it vanished.
Try that again. No, I don't want that. I'm getting Carrie's presentation pulled up here. I don't want to do that. Sorry about that, Carrie.
You can do it again.
Let's try again and just keep it. Okay, so we'll try to keep this up. I'll be very brief on the WIFIA since we've really already talked about that. So the unemployment rate continues to drop. Presented here is the unemployment rate for Oregon, the Portland metropolitan area, and Washington County. And it's been consistent throughout. The Washington County economy is stronger, but nevertheless, you can see we've had improvement in the unemployment rate, but we are still far from where we were back in March prior to the onset of COVID-19. So again, our customers are still having difficulties in that regard. Quite a few of them are without work. As I mentioned, we'll look at the revenues, the collection, and the expenses. So first on the revenue side, a couple things. This is an improving story. We still are well behind in our revenues. Some of that predated COVID-19. But having said that, August was had a glimmer of some good news. August of 2019 was the beginning of really a poor revenue performance. The weather in August of 2019 was not conducive to high water sales. So when you look at this year, our water sales are 104.5% of what they were in August 2019, meaning it's increased by 4.5%. Before we get too celebratory on that, a couple things to keep in mind. First of all, we had a 3.6% rate increase. So a rate increase itself should have generated 3.6% out of that 4.5%. The second thing is that, as I mentioned, August 2019 was not a stellar month. So our revenues are still lagging, and from a revenue picture, we are still behind and not necessarily catching up. Our commercial and irrigation classes are down about 18% from a rolling 12-month average, looking from August 30th of 2019 to August 30th of 2020. That's about $2.3 million of the $7.7 million shortfall is coming from those classes. Single-family residential water sales down 1.5% from that 12-month rolling average. So I'm looking, the first line item, we're comparing August to August, just 1 month compared to 1 month, August 2019 compared to August 2020. That's where we saw a slight improvement of 104.5. The rest of these, we're looking over a 12-month rolling average to see what the year is producing, what 12 months would produce, and there we're off. Collections, as I reported last time, we're still working hard on the collections front, but the bigger issue that we have right now isn't necessarily collections as much as just weak water sales. Hopefully, as we look forward to the coming month, we're going to see some additional water going through these retail meters, and hopefully we'll see a better month in September, which typically is our larger month. September, October, hopefully we'll see a better performance in those 2 months as we go forward. Comparison of water deliveries. Here we're presenting the daily average by month and the historic average, the 5-year rolling average. So you can see if you look here that 2020, in terms of just the water deliveries that we have, are exceeding what we had in 2019. And the summer of 2019, again, was a real tough summer for us, and that set us back quite a bit. But we're still slightly behind there. And this is just showing without the history. You can see the more pronounced demands that we've seen this summer, and hopefully, again, we'll see that as we continue to read the meters into September for consumption that was in July and August. On the gallons per capita per day front, we're seeing an uptick on that, and that's as we drop off. Over time, we're picking up this month and losing consumption from the prior 60-month period. And I believe Commissioner Sanders may have had a question on this slide. I'm not sure if it's here or if it was on a subsequent slide. So I'm going to pause and see if Commissioner Sanders, if I had the right slide. I think you said slide 29, but we have a different pagination here.
Yeah, I see that, and I apologize. It was this slide, and it had to do with the dash line, which is the historic average, the 5-year rolling average. 2 slides ago, when you were showing one more back. There we go. The dash line here, since this is 2 years of data, the dash line was repeated from August 18th to August 19th, and August 19th to 20th. It's basically the same line. But when we go back ahead 2 slides now,
I'm sorry, it's taking me a while to click this.
no worries. That dash line is different. I would expect that the historic 5-year average from August 18th to August 19th would be mirrored in the historic average from August 19th to August 20th. Is that an incorrect assumption?
You're talking about the dash line itself.
Yep.
So what the dash line presenting here is gallons per capita per day. The dash line that we have back here, I'm sure I'm getting your question entirely, and is, let me go back one more. This is actually showing the daily average by month. So this is looking at each month and taking the average daily deliveries, which has got the seasonality in it. I'm not sure I'm answering your question. So maybe what we could do is actually sit down and go through these numbers, and I can pull out the actual numbers themselves and make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, let's take this offline, and I'll be able to explain it to you a little better under less pressure.
And what I can do then, Commissioner Sanders, actually take the raw data out too, and we can look at that and make sure that I'm following your question appropriately.
Well, now I'm just drooling. Thank you.
Okay, so the story here, I think, is that we are seeing some improvements, and I'm hoping that will result in a better revenue picture. Again, that these are the water deliveries, not necessarily the water that's gone through the meters. So these are the water we bring into the system, and I'm hoping that the water that's coming into the system that Carrie's group is delivering is actually going through these retail meters. And as we read those meters, we'll recognize that revenue again, largely in September and October. And the same challenges that we've had before. So I won't spend too much time on this slide. You've all seen that. But one of the things we're trying to tease out of this is what is related to COVID-19 and what is related to just simply the water sales that were low last year. So before COVID-19, we saw a reduction in our revenues. And so we're trying to track and discern what is related to COVID-19 and what isn't. And when we look at the revenue by class, that's where we see our commercial customers and our irrigation customers are off, and that seems to be part of the issue. And it makes sense if our commercial customers have experienced some shutdowns related to COVID-19. So what are we seeing? Lower revenue in August, but a slight improvement versus budget. Commercial, it's confirmed it's trending downward. There's a slight improvement, but you might remember from last month when I gave this presentation, rather than being about 18% down, we're down by about a third. So slight improvement, but full recovery is still not apparent. The production remains strong. It was strong last month, but again, that doesn't amount to a lot of money. It's about $77,000. So that's still a bright spot. Irrigation's improved from August, in August from July, but still well off plan. It's off by about $30,000 from August of 2019, so it's about 12%. But again, we were down by about a third when we looked at this in July. So we're down, but it seems that the trend is moving in the right direction. Once we leave the summer period, and really we leave the summer period because of the delay in the billing cycles in October is when we sort of have the last bit of that. Once we leave that period, it's going to be all but impossible to build back any of the additional revenue because the non-discretionary water use is primarily in those winter and shoulder months. So we'll kind of know where we're going to end the fiscal year and the biennium. We'll have a better idea of that once we get past our October. Collections, just talk real quickly about collections, and this is the same information that we've presented before. So here's our presentation of our average age of account receivable. So these are the number of days, the average age that we have in our account receivables. We'd like to see that low. As you can see, the black lines present, or the black bars present 2019, and the red bars are comparing 2020. Prior to March, prior to this onset of COVID-19, we were seeing our average age a little bit higher. This next graphic, I think, shows it in greater relief. When we looked at July, the difference between 2019 2020 was 6.3 days. That's narrowed to 4.6 days. So the gap between the current year and the prior year was widening until August, and that's caused in part by the higher water revenue in August of 2020 versus August 2019. And the way that works is if you send out larger bills, they are a much younger account receivable age. So they tend to pull down the average versus if you had a smaller amount of revenue, you'd have less money coming in at a very young AR, and the older AR would pull up the average. So if that makes a lot of sense to you, but this is reflected by and large by having more revenue come in, that 104.5% coming in, and August of 2019 coming out. Days of sales outstanding is, again, a calculation looking at our total account receivables divided by our total sales and done on a daily basis. So how many days of revenue do we have tied up in our account receivables? And we do the same comparison here looking at 2019 and 2020. Looking at the interpretation of this slide, the prior month was affected by the large gap between the sales in July 2019 versus 2020. In August, the sales were higher than August 2019. So this is kind of the opposite effect where 2019 actually, in July, we saw 2019 having a higher days sales outstanding because it has a year's worth of revenue in there, and we see that reversal happening in August. I would say at this point, this particular metric that we're following is not providing us the kind of information. I think the average age of account receivable is the one that we're watching to have a better sense of what's happening with our collections. But more important than that is that we're looking at customers that would be in a shut-off mode. So these are customers, as you well know, the district has a moratorium on turning off interrupting service for non-payment. And so you can see that our number of customers were growing that were in that status. We've contacted customers and have brought that number down. As of August 30th, and this August 31st rather, it was down to 1,263 customers that had we have been turning off their water would have had their water turned off. And this number changes literally as our customer service team reaches out to customers. It changes on a daily basis. And as additional bills are issued, as they go through their billing process, new bills come out, then you'll see, and as those bills age, you'll see customers coming into the shut-off status as they process through the regular calendar that we have that issues the urgent notices and so forth. But what we're seeing on the dollar side is an uptick. And what this is telling us is that dollars per customer in shut-off is growing. And that makes sense that even though the number of customers is smaller, what we're seeing is that customers have multiple billings now that are in that we're carrying on our account receivables. We're working obviously hard to with our partners at Community Action to get as many of these customers as possible to apply for relief under the CARES Act funding from the federal government that was part of the grant to the county. The county actually provided a grant to an organization called Community Action. We want our customers who have problems paying their water bills to reach out to Community Action and to apply for assistance from Community Action to help get their water bills paid. Sorry about that. We had one of our janitors come in. And then we looked at the average age of account receivable for those customers that are in that shut-off status, and we're seeing that has essentially the difference between 69 and 67 days is really not significant. But we are monitoring this, and of course we want to get these customers assistance through Community Action as best we can. So from a collection standpoint, that's where we are. I'm going to pause here to see if you have any questions on the collections before I get into the expenses, and we'll wrap up very quickly.
I'm actually, despite being concerned about the amount of money that's out there, I'm gratified that we don't have, I mean, relative to the size of our service territory and the number of customers we have, that's a relatively small number of customers in shut-off status. I remember at the Mayor's Forum at the West Side Economic Alliance earlier this year, Cornelius, I think it was, had 17% of their customers in a position where they couldn't pay their water bills. So we're doing a lot better than that.
On the collection side, and as I've said, we look at this from three perspectives. So the revenue, the collections, and the expenses. And as I mentioned earlier, right now, our biggest focus is on the revenue side, where we're down $7.7 million over this biennium. And we may have, hopefully, I'm hoping that in the coming September, October, that may not grow, but certainly we're going to be down multiple millions of dollars over this biennium. So the revenue picture is really the thing that we're watching very closely and are most concerned about. But yeah, we're fortunate that a lot of our customers are able to keep up on their water bills, and for those that can't, we've got a good solution working with Community Action to get them current. So that's our hope that we can continue to push on that. Any other questions before I move on? I'm sorry. Questions, entertaining or otherwise? Okay. Move on. Poor attempt at humor, sorry. So we are looking at our COVID-19 expenses, and we had one, as well as our overall expenses. We're continuing to bring our expenses in below budget, and we're doing everything we can to be judicious in the spending of money. And we are, in fact, submitting a separate grant that we have through Washington County, not to fund the customer assistance through community action. This is actually to us for qualifying expenses related to COVID-19. And so last month we submitted almost $100,000 substantiation for the grant repayment. This month it's about $14,000. You might ask, what's the big difference? Well, the first request we put in went back to March when the COVID crisis began, March 16th of 2020 through the end of last month. This is for just 1 month's time, and a lot of the expenses were already incurred. So that's why you're seeing a small amount. But we will continue to monitor our COVID-related expenses and continue to apply for reimbursement through Washington County as allowed from the grant itself. Won't spend too much time on this other than to say that we did complete the WIFIA loan re-execution that we talked about, that Tom talked about, and that Clark mentioned. And when we look at the total savings over the life of the loan, so just kind of by way of memory, the loan itself, repayment starts after substantial completion of the Willamette Water Supply Program. So substantial completion, we're estimating July of 2026. And so the first repayments will start in about 2027. Over a 35-year period ending in 2061. So that's how we get that long period of time. The total savings will be $122 million, or estimated to be $122 million. It will depend on how we draw the money. So I don't want to get into too many of the technical details, but we'll be capitalizing interest. So it's possible that this number could be a little bit more. The savings could have been more or less depending on how our cash flows actually work out and how we.
You mean we may or may not get it, that extra 82 cents?
We may or may not get or we may get more than that. Exactly. But regardless, if we had thought that we could get funding for a good portion of our water supply program at 1.35%, somebody told me that 5 years from now, I would have just been incredulous. But the fact is, this is a great interest rate. 2.39 was a great interest rate, and 1.35 is a fantastic interest rate. So we're really happy to have that and secure that. And keep in mind, we still have all the flexibility of the WIFIA program that we had before. So we're in good shape there. When the debt service kicks in, this is an important thing for us. It's going to shave off about $3.5 million per year in our debt service. And within our financial plan, this is really important, especially as we consider the impact that we've had on our revenues. We're leveraging all that revenue to fund debt service, to fund the debt service as well as the debt service coverage. So that's been a real hit. Having said that, this $3.5 million is going to be very helpful as we go forward. So late breaking news, real happy about that outcome. With that, any questions that you might have or comments?
This is Dick. I have a comment. You did a great job. I can't stress that enough.
Paul, this is Jim Doan. Do we have a breakdown of where the arrears are as far as zip code? I mean, is it centered someplace, or is it pretty much uniform throughout the district?
It's funny you should ask that. That's one of the reporting mechanisms that we're working on, is to try to correlate this with a couple of thoughts. Is could we enhance our outreach in those areas? Can we help with a conservation program in those areas? But we don't have that tied to our GIS just yet. But that's something that we're working to get. Right now, our priority, frankly, is to get as many customers as we can to get funded with the CARES Act program. So all of our efforts are in that area, because that money goes away at the end of this calendar year. But we do want to get that reporting information, Commissioner Doan. So CEO Hickman talked about AMI to give us more sense of the water use, but we also want to tie it back to their ability to pay, because it's really critical for us to be able to tailor the outreach, for example, to those areas. So we don't have that, but it is on our work plan to get that information developed.
Thank you. Sounds great. You get questions out of the blue, and I appreciate the fact that you've already thought about it. Again, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I want to echo what Commissioner Schmidt said. I am so pleased and proud of all the work that you guys have done with the WIFIA refinancing especially. And I also very much appreciate that you've done it so quickly, and that you've been working with Senator Merkley's office to hopefully stave off any worries that WIFIA financing might go away. But to the extent that you've already got the refinancing locked in, that is wonderful.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't know how long these interest rates are going to stay at this level, and it's you never know when to pull the trigger. Today, if we closed, the interest rate would have been 2 basis points lower, but the risk that it go a different direction is just such that I think it's prudent to move as quickly as possible. But anything can change. So we're hoping our partners are able to get a favorable interest rate as well. So we're doing everything we can to help in that regard.
Not as good as ours.
Well, anything helps. If no other questions, I guess that will conclude my presentation. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. If there are no other items of business for the good of the order, I guess this meeting will be adjourned. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the evening.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.